one of the things that I have just been gifted is an ability to be a catalyst for others. I love seeing people win, Ruben. Nothing brings me more joy than seeing someone who may have found themselves in a position where perhaps they were doubting their own capabilities, right? Or they were unable to see a path ahead, or everything in a particular framework looked like it was just all coming down on them. And then they were able to shift something and turn the entire thing around, and they find a sense of fulfillment or joy or accomplishment. So seeing other people win is what brings me tremendous satisfaction. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I feel like I am particularly good at helping people find their own.
I study the patterns of the universe.
Advancement in the brain.
Virtual your mind. Talking about your life. Fundamental principles.
Philosophy.
What is and what is not true.
Those who know themselves.
Being better every single day.
Hey everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Think Grow podcast, where personal development meets real life. I'm your host, Ruben Chavez, and I explore a variety of topics with thought leaders, creators, entrepreneurs, artists, scientists, researchers, and all sorts of interesting people, with the goal to bring you different perspectives you can use to enrich your mind and improve your life in whatever way you see fit. Today is a very special episode. I have the honor and privilege of speaking with someone who I've admired for years. She is an entrepreneur, a writer, and a philanthropist, Marie Forleo. And for those of you not familiar with that name, Marie is a self-described multi-passionate entrepreneur. She is the host of the award-winning show Marie TV, where she helps people create a life and business they love. That's how I first came in contact with her work, actually. And she's the creator of B School, which is the most amazing entrepreneurial / business program out there. I've taken it, and it completely transformed the way that Vanessa and I run our business. But we talk more about that in the episode. And you can also learn more about B School and about my personal experience with B School in the show notes for this episode on my website at thinkgrowprosper.com. And then she's also the author of an upcoming book called Everything is Figureoutable, which I'm super excited for. So in this episode, we cover a range of topics. We talk about being multi-passionate, having wide-ranging interests, and kind of how to use that to your advantage rather than seeing it as a problem. We talk about leaning into who you are, how to be more of yourself, leaning into your quirkiness, especially if you're someone who is making things online and putting yourself out there in the world of the internet. What else? We talk about B School, and we talk about what it is, why she created it, and of course we talk about Marie's journey and just how she got to where she is today. I asked her some personal questions about writing that I'm curious about because, as many of you know, I've been working on and off on my own book for some time, and it's been kind of a love-hate relationship there with the writing process, but I asked Marie about her writing process and how she approaches that. So I asked her about some of the criticism she's received over the years and how she's dealt with that. And she opened up to me about that, and I really appreciated that. I think a lot of you will find that part of the conversation really relatable and useful and even oddly comforting. So I gleaned some really good tips from her and throughout this entire conversation, really. So I loved talking with her. She is one of the warmest, most genuine people that I've spoken with, and I hope you love this conversation as much as I did. Here's Marie Forleo. Marie, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Ruben. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. I am just really honored to have you here and very excited. I was initially drawn to you. You kind of stood out from the array of options when it comes like in the business world for a variety of reasons, I would say, but mainly it's just like your charisma and your combination of business plus personal development really stood out to me. And you're also much more pleasant to listen to. Like you weren't just sell, sell, sell. And I found that very refreshing. So I've been listening to you for years, and I just wanted to say thank you for, inspiring what I do and how I approach my business through a variety of ways. But for the, maybe 3 or 4 people who don't know who you are and aren't familiar with your work, can you kind of just give a little bit of background on who you are and how you got to be where you are?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for those kind words. I really appreciate it. For some context, I've been doing what I'm doing now for almost 20 years. I love it. It is my life's work. When I started off my career, the first place I had a job was actually on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street. So it was very far away from what I'm doing now. But I was excited about that position because I had a lot of energy. I've always had a lot of energy. And, when you work on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, there's literally no seats. You don't sit down. You are running around all day long, sometimes feeling, just like a crazy person in a sense. And I really enjoyed that. But I got to tell you, Ruben, about 6 months into that gig, now, let me set some other context. I was so grateful to have the position, right? I'm the first one in my family to go to college. That was a very, very big deal. My parents busted their buns to put me in school. So this was a great honor to have a position, to have a steady paycheck, to have healthcare, all of those things. And I was very cognizant of that fact. But I started hearing these small voices inside of me that said, Marie, this is not who you are. This is not what you're meant to do in this life. There is something else for you. And I tried to ignore those voices for so long, Ruben. I was like, okay, be quiet. I'm not going to listen to you. I need to stay focused on the task at hand. I need to keep this job. But it kept getting louder and louder until one day I was on the floor of the exchange and I was having a near panic attack, which I didn't really recognize at the time. I just found it really hard to breathe. I was starting to get dizzy. I didn't feel well. And I told my boss at the time, I said, hey, I just need to run out and grab a coffee real quick. Is that okay? He's like, absolutely, go for it. So I left the floor, and instead of getting a coffee, I ran to the nearest church. I had just graduated from a Catholic university, so I was kind of trained at that point to look up and ask a higher power for some guidance anytime I found myself in a crisis. I sat down on those church steps and I cried my eyes out because I felt so guilty. I felt so ashamed. I felt so broken. I'm like, how do I have this arguable dream job? And I keep hearing these voices in my head. I don't have another backup plan. I'm thousands of dollars in debt after college. Like, none of this makes sense. The first clue I got was to call my dad, someone who I admired, I loved, and who worked his buns off to put me through school and was so proud of me to have this job. So when I called him up, of course, I was blubbering. He couldn't get a word in edgewise. And the moment I took a breath, Ruben, he broke in and he said, Ree, calm down. Everything's going to be okay. I'm not worried about you. You've worked since you were 9. You will find a way to pay your bills. However, you are going to be working for the next 40 to 50 years of your life. If you don't find something you love to do, nothing is going to work for you. That is the whole secret to life. And when those words really sunk into my heart, even though I was still panicked because I didn't know how to find something I loved, and nor could my dad really give me that direction, there was so much truth in his words that something in me settled. And then I made a decision that I was going to quit that job within a week and just go on an odyssey and figure out who I was and what I was meant to do. And I'll try and get this as short as I can, but I think it's instructive because perhaps many people listening to this right now may have found themselves in this period at some point in their life, or maybe they're in this stage right now. So I tried to look for clues about who I was and what I was good at. I loved small business. My dad was a small business owner, so that world was very attractive to me. And I also was very creative. As a young child, I thought maybe I would be an animator for Disney or a fashion designer or something in the creative arts. So I had these two kind of competing passions, and I thought, well, what is a career that puts them both together? And the first thing that came to my mind was magazine publishing. There's the editorial side and there's the advertising side. There's art and commerce, and it kind of blends together. So I hustled and I got myself a job as an ad sales assistant for Gourmet Magazine, a food-oriented magazine in the storied Condé Nast Publishing empire. Start going to this new job, super excited. I'm like, okay, this has got to be it. It's like, there's creativity, it's a whole new kind of scene. It was amazing. And then a few months into that job, the voices started to come back. Marie, this still isn't it. This isn't what you're meant to do. This isn't who you're meant to be in the world. And now I'm starting to feel really broken inside. I'm like, what is happening here? This is, again, another arguable dream job. And I just want to quit and I don't have a backup plan. What's wrong with me? So I tried to take a more objective look at the situation. I said, okay, these past 2 jobs have been very focused around money, right? Wall Street, the guys I worked with, they were making tens of millions. In ad sales, again, it's all about numbers, hitting those quotas, right? Pushing those sales as high as they can be. And I thought, well, maybe I've been leaning too heavily on the business side. Maybe I need to lean a little bit more into my creativity. And I also looked at it from this perspective, which I think can be instructive for your listeners. When I looked at my boss, who was an ad executive, and I looked at the publisher of the magazine, she was a very accomplished, smart, intelligent woman. I realized I didn't want to become either of them. And I thought to myself, if I don't want to climb this corporate ladder and rise in the ranks, what am I doing wasting their time and mine? So I went to HR, finagled a way to get an editorial assistant position in the fashion side of another magazine called Mademoiselle. So again, now I'm in the editorial department, right? This is a lot more creative, less about numbers, more about layout and photo shoots and, all the kind of things that come together from the visual, emotional side of a magazine.
Right.
So I start working there. I'm like, okay, this has got to be it, right? I'm working with all of these highly creative people. I'm meeting new designers. I'm doing all of these things I've never done before. This is going to be awesome. I'm sure you can imagine what happened. The voices started to come back. Marie, this still isn't it. Now, I have to tell you, Ruben, at this point, I was really starting to feel like something was wrong with me. I was questioning, do I not have the cognitive skills? Like I just graduated the valedictorian of my class. I know I'm intelligent, but I can't seem to focus. Do I have ADHD? Which it turns out I do. I was just going through all of these different things, trying to figure out what was wrong with me because all of my friends at that time, they were getting promotions. Some of them were starting to get engaged, get married, build families. And here I am wanting to just quit my job again. So one day when I was at Mademoiselle, I was on the internet and I stumbled across this article about a new profession at the time called coaching. Now you have to remember, this is 1999. This is way before coaching was mainstream. This is like a decade and a half before social media, right? This was just like the early days. And when I read that article, Ruben, something in my heart just lit up. It was like that scene when you feel like the clouds part and little angels come around and they're, working on their trumpets and it's like, oh, every cell in my body just vibrated with yes. Now, the logical part of my mind was very quick to jump in. You're 23 years old. Who the heck's going to hire a 23-year-old life coach? You haven't even lived life yet. You can't hold down a job. You're in debt. You have nothing to offer people. Who do you think you are? The kind of litany of self-abuse that many of us can experience in our own minds, all of that was happening. But I couldn't deny that this felt more right than anything I'd come across before. So at that night, actually, I signed up for a 3-year coach training program and I continued to work at the magazine and I did my coaching studies at night. A few months into the future, I got a call from the HR department and they had a promotion for me. They wanted to move me to Vogue. This was more money. This was more prestige. This was working at arguably the best fashion magazine in the world. So there was that safe path with the health insurance and the benefits and all those good things. Or I could quit and start my own coaching business, which I had no freaking clue how to do that. I didn't have any resources, nothing. So of course I chose to quit. And I started my business right then and there. And I started supporting myself by bartending and waiting tables pretty much 7 days a week. And so that's how, I know it's kind of a long-winded way, but that's how I found what I do. And for the past almost 2 decades, that's all I've been devoted to.
Well, no, I mean, I love that. There's so much richness in there. And what I love about your story is that you tried so many different things. I mean, something you say is the key to success is to start before you are ready. I think that's how you put it. And I think you embody that in your journey because, a lot of people, myself included in the past, have wanted to kind of intellectualize our passion or what it is we're excited about and think about it. But you really can't think about it, right? Like you really have to just go out there and try different things. And your story kind of exemplifies that. Like you just tried different things. Oh, that one wasn't quite right. Oh, that one wasn't quite right. Oh, let's try this over here. Oh, a little mix of that, a little mix of this. And then you kind of figure it out. And so that kind of leads me to my next question. It's like something I love about you, first of all, is that you have a really great way of reframing people's problems or questions in a way that's a little bit more beneficial, right? And so, people might think that having too many interests is a drawback, but you've gone and basically made that your job description. Like, I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur, you say. And so for the people who feel like they have too many interests, quote unquote, too many interests, like, how do you leverage that? Like, what's your advice to those people? How do you turn that from a perceived problem into an advantage?
Absolutely. Well, I think there are many of us, whenever I have said that phrase, I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur, to folks who haven't heard it, they're like, oh my goodness, I think I am too. And just to put this into perspective, so much of the advice that we have about career and livelihood is outdated. It's leftover from the industrialized age where everyone was supposed to be specialized. It was like you were a cog in a wheel. So we have these kind of archaic models that we're still working from. And I know when I was trying to find my way, even after I started my coaching business, I have to tell you this, Ruben, there came a point where I was like, oh my goodness, I love coaching, but I don't feel like this is all I am. So it was almost like a second identity crisis. And that's how I came up with this phrase, because I also had passions around hip hop, around dance, around marketing, around writing, spirituality, speaking. Like, there were all these things. And I remember writing in my journal, how do I know which one I'm supposed to follow? Because all the advice that I had read in the success books at that time was about choosing one thing and focusing on it. And every time I tried to do that, even around coaching, which I loved, it felt like I was cutting off a limb. It felt like I was a round kind of peg trying to fit myself into a square box. I just didn't fit in. Yes. So it was only when I honestly said, F it, I'm going to start pursuing all the things that I love, that I finally started to get traction, because I stopped denying the essence of who I really was. I stopped trying to fit into society's expectations. I stopped trying to, look good to others, and started to be true to myself. So to answer your question, how do you take someone who may find themselves in a multi-passionate, like, oh my goodness, that's me. I love all the things. How do I choose? There are many different ways, and I don't know if we'll be able to unpack all of them in this discussion, but a couple things I would say is the things that you're interested in are not random. They are connected to your purpose. They are connected to the body of work that you will bring through in this lifetime. So pay attention to them. Not all of them need to be monetized. So there may be things that you love in this world that you shouldn't necessarily turn into a business, but you may not know unless you go explore them and try. So one of the things that I run my life by is a motto that says, clarity comes from engagement, not thought. Just like what you were saying before, Ruben, which was so spot on. And I'm just like cheering for you as you were saying it. We cannot intellectualize these things, right? You only get so far in your mind, but our body contains so much wisdom. Engagement, going to experiment and test and taste things. That's where we really get feedback. Not only feedback from the external world, but more importantly, feedback from our internal signals of what we actually like, what really lights us up. And then we can start to engage more of our logical, rational mind. Like, would I want to do this for a living? Is this how I want to earn money? If I needed to earn money in this way, would I actually kind of sour my passion for it? And those are some things that we can start to, unpack. But the main point is, whatever you're drawn to, give yourself permission in some way, shape, or form to engage with it, to let it be a part of your life. And I'll tell you, I had a simul career for about 5 or 6 years in hip hop, dance, and fitness. I was one of the world's first elite Nike dance athletes. I've trained so many other teachers and dancers around the world. And even though at a certain point in my career, Ruben, I stopped earning money from dance, music and movement and choreography, and even the influences of culture and music around that impacts my brand on a daily basis. It brings joy to what I do. And I think it sets me apart in the marketplace.
Yeah, I totally agree. And especially to your point about the feeling it in your body, like the emotion of excitement is such a powerful emotion, not like jumping up and down excitement, but, like Marie Kondo would say, does this spark joy, and that whole thing is like, it's a very important, it's something that can give you direction, and it's not a woo-woo thing. It's like, oh no, there's something here that's important. And just, I think paying attention to what it is, the things in your life that spark joy, like you said, they're all connected, right? So one little thing that may seem insignificant actually can lead to something bigger down the road. And so I think that's a really good point you made. Something you say often, in fact, I think at the end of every episode of Marie TV, is like the world needs that special gift that only you have. And I just, that's so simple, but so profound. Do you think that everyone has like one special gift? Obviously not, I would say, because you probably have, because you're a multi-passionate entrepreneur yourself. But I guess more than that, what do you think your special gifts are, or do you even just your one special gift that you think is takes priority over all of them?
Well, I think to your first question, I do believe that every single human on this planet has a whole set of gifts that they're here to give. One of which is their heart and their love. That may be through the vehicle of their work. That may be through their connection with their family and friends, and even strangers that they meet on the street. And that is a gift that we cannot underestimate how transformative that power is. And that's not trite. That's something extraordinarily powerful that most of us underestimate. The power of our love, our attention, shining that on another human can be one of the most healing things any of us can experience. Now, for me, it's a great question. They're hard to articulate, but I think one of the things that I have just been gifted is an ability to be a catalyst for others. I love seeing people win, Ruben. Nothing brings me more joy than seeing someone who may have found themselves in a position where perhaps they were doubting their own capabilities, right? Or they were unable to see a path ahead, or everything in a particular framework looked like it was just all coming down on them. And then they were able to shift something and turn the entire thing around, and they find a sense of fulfillment or joy or accomplishment. So seeing other people win is what brings me tremendous satisfaction. And I think part of my gift is being a catalyst for those kind of shifts. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I feel like I am particularly good at helping people find their own.
Do you think that what you just said, that thing that excites you, seeing people transform, being a catalyst for other people, do you think that is one and the same with your why, like why it is you do things?
Yes, I do. I love people as well. When I meet anyone and I look in their eyes, or I just have a chance to spend any time with them, I just get so excited about who they are, and I want to know more. And what are they excited about? What are their dreams? What's their story? What's happening? What are they creating? And once I start hearing those details, I can't turn off the part of me that wants to, whether it's support them, cheer them on, offer, oh my goodness, you should read this book. It's perfect for what you're doing right now. That's just kind of how I'm naturally wired. So I do think it's part of my why. I just believe that we humans are capable of so much more than we realize. And it is through that connection and support that we're able to reach some of our grandest dreams and have a really good time while we do it.
Yeah. Getting in touch with the deeper things about us that kind of connect us to our work, I think is super important. And you're very, very good about kind of just showing your true self on the internet. I mean, insofar as you can do that on the internet, you're very good about that. And actually, one of the things that initially drew me to you and to just your brand in general was kind of the hip hop motif that you have in your personality and in your brand in general. Like I really relate to that, like I grew up with some of the same music that you did. And I really connect with that. And so I think that's so important. And you talk about this in B School too, why it's important to kind of lean into who you are, which I want to get into in a bit. But like, how do you be, this is kind of a weird question, I would say, and it's almost sad that we have to talk about this, but I think it's really important. Like, how do you be your quote unquote genuine self in the age of the internet when you look to your left, you look to your right, and everybody's like, you think you should fit into a particular mold? How do you lean into your quirkiness?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think you actually hit upon part of the problem in how you frame the question. When people are looking to the right and to the left, that's when they start to compare to others, and that's when they start to feel the need to conform. So the more that you can keep your eyes and your attention on not only yourself, but if we're looking at this through the lens of a business, how can you serve your customers? How can you provide value? How can you provide love or joy? And the answers to those questions usually come from your heart, the things that excite you, the things that interest you. So, concrete example, I remember when I first started writing email newsletters, and oh my goodness, Ruben, this is like in the year 2000.
Oh man.
This is before email. People didn't even really know this was a thing yet. Like,
this was when people were excited to receive emails every single day.
Totally. So I remember when I first started trying to write email newsletters, I had this idea in my mind of what a professional businesswoman would be like, right? And so that image for me, she wore suits with shoulder pads and like nylons, and she had some, high glass corner office. That was kind of my childish idea of what a successful businesswoman was. And I first started writing from that voice. And can I tell you, everything I wrote sucked because it wasn't me. It was so stunted. I was like trying to be something I wasn't. And then when I said, oh, well, this isn't working, let me just write how I would write, which is a girl from New Jersey, and talk about the things that I like to talk about in the voice that I have, right? The voice that's me. Yeah. Everything started changing. And then I remembered when I was trying for a while actually to kind of silo off, like, this is my coaching practice. And then I had this simul career in health and fitness. And I remember being really scared at one point going, I wonder if I should tell the people on my kind of life coaching, personal development list about this dance workshop that I'm doing. And I think it was like a J-Lo inspired workshop at the time. And I was so terrified. And I said, all right, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to see if I can blend all these things and see if people don't think I'm unprofessional or like, is she flaky? And I got such a huge response from the folks who I had assumed only wanted one facet of me. Then they were like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to come to this workshop. I had no idea you were a dance teacher. So I'm telling you all of this to kind of paint the picture of how I discovered how absolutely valuable it was and how refreshing and freeing it was for me to not hide who I was. Then I started talking about the fact that I am obsessed with Smurfs. Like, as a child, I was a member of the official Smurf fan club. Most people don't even know that thing existed. I had mugs. I still have over like 100 and something figurines of those. Wow. Yeah. And like the Smurf mushroom village, all the things, right? I remember when I started sharing about the fact that I love zombie movies. I do not do any kind of slasher films, but I do love spooky horror and I love zombie films. And I remember when I would start to talk about these little things just intermittently, whether it was in my content, speaking from stage, people in person, they just felt like, oh my goodness, you're just like me. This is what I could totally listen to whatever you have to say, because I feel like you're not holding yourself up on a pedestal, and I relate to you more because I like some of those things. So I know your original question was, how do we be more of ourselves in this day and age? So I think the two things are, stop looking at what everyone else is doing, because comparison is creative kryptonite. I talk about it like doing shots of Compearschlager. If anyone remembers that kind of awful liqueur from back in the day called Goldschlager, which I drank too much of in college, and I wound up puking over in the bushes. We'll never do that again. Compearschlager is very similar. When you look at what other people are doing, whether it's on social media or their websites or wherever, and then you walk away feeling like shit, it's equivalent to having done all these shots of Compearschlager, and it takes you days to recover.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I had author Neil Pesricha on the show recently. He's the author of Happiness Equation, and he says something, and he says, different is better than better. Like, being different is better than being better. And so I like that. That kind of speaks to your point about, like, everyone thinks that they're unique in some way, but then when you say these little quirky things, it's like, oh, actually you relate to me, like we're the same. And so it's very nice to find people who are like you, in these seemingly quirky ways. But something else that came up for me while you were talking was the concept of comparison. And obviously we all know, like, we shouldn't compare ourselves. Obviously, like, we figured that out now. And yet it is so difficult still for some people, and myself included sometimes. Like, is there anything else to that message? Like, is there any other, like, is there a logic to not comparing? Like, can you speak to that anymore? Like, how can we go about not comparing ourselves?
Well, I think part of it is making it really simple, is to notice when it happens. For most people, there is not a lot of awareness of how much time they're spending scrolling their phones. They're doing it almost habitually at this point. And that's not by accident, Ruben, that's by design. So every social media platform, every app out there, some of them are funded with billions of dollars, employing some of the most incredibly creative, genius, smart, intelligent humans that are doing everything possible to make these platforms and these apps as addictive as possible. And this comes back to neuroscience, right? Every ding, every like, every notification, you get a dopamine hit, and it is rewiring your brain to go back in there. 9 times out of 10, what are you doing? You're looking at other people. So to your point, you have to actually look at the triggers. When do you find yourself comparing yourself to others? And can you slow down everything and really look at it objectively and go, what happened here? Was I insecure? Did I hit a tough spot in my own writing where I didn't know how to continue this paragraph, or I didn't know how to finish this chapter, or I was writing a proposal to a client and then, I kind of got stuck and then I went to my phone or I went to something else. Yeah. So if you can just be objective, step back and bring some awareness to when it happens, you're 90% there to disabling it. And then I'd also say you have to apply a little bit of a nuanced lens. One of the things that I've noticed over the course of my career, and I work with people a lot on this, is at some points in your career, you've got to just be a little gentle and protective of yourself. There may be that one person that for whatever reason, you love them, you admire them, you respect them, you want the best for them. But for some strange reason, right now, whenever you see that particular person or you see their work, you find yourself making you less. You find yourself comparing on such a level that it's just, again, it's like Comparschlager. You get off track for hours, if not days. So I would say we bless those people. We want them to win. We want them to succeed. There's more than enough for everyone to go around. But if you notice you have a particular sensitivity, don't follow them for a bit. Stay in your own game. I always talk about create before you consume. It is a transformative, simple habit that has profound implications. So if you create what you want for your life before you consume the work of others, you will go a long way to disabling that comparative habit.
Yeah, I love that. So pay attention is the first part. Like, just pay attention, become aware of the times in which you find yourself mindlessly looking out into the abyss of the internet. And then secondly, remove yourself from dangerous kind of pitfalls that habitual things. Yeah.
I just want to give a quick analogy. If you were someone, right, that was saying, okay, wow, whether, I've been drinking a lot, let's say, and you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. That is not part of my identity any further. I just don't want to have that, but it's going to take me a little bit to get into this new space of being sober. You wouldn't go to a bar. That's not where you would hang out, right? You would give yourself a training period and say, okay, I need to take these certain steps to kind of embody this new me. It's the same thing when it comes to training almost any habit. Identify who it is that you want to be, how you want to be, and then set up your environment, which is one of the most profound things that impacts us every moment of the day. Set it up to support you.
Another thing that I think about when we're talking about comparison is like, you really don't know, just logically, from a completely logical standpoint, you don't know other people's lives. Like, you don't know all the infinite number of variables that have contributed to their particular position in life right now. You don't know where they started. You don't know what their goals are. You don't know how they view their particular state of success or whatever. So it's all subjective, and it's so trying to work out that math problem is futile.
Right. It's all conjecture in your mind. You're making up a story that may have nothing to do with the reality of that human.
Another thing that kind of came up for me was, so I think you gave some really good advice for people who are kind of wanting to get out there, wanting to start a business, wanting to be someone on the internet who makes their living on the internet. Get out there and be yourself, right? Get out there and actually put your genuine self online. In doing so, though, the logical next step there is that, of course, someone's not going to like it because it's the internet and because we live in a world where the people are different. And so talking about criticism, this is something that I get asked about a lot. Like, being someone who's out there a lot, like you are, how do you deal with criticism? And I'll frame this a little bit more specifically here. Like, what's maybe a criticism that you've received, maybe a common criticism or a time that you've been criticized, and how did you deal with it? How do you process that?
There's so much I have to say on this topic. So I've certainly been criticized for years. I'll give you one specific example. And sadly, this happens more often than not to women, just the culture that we live in. I remember when I was on Super Soul Sunday, so Oprah's show, right? One of the highlights of my career. It's so exciting. Couldn't wait to be there. And I remember like the first comment I saw, Ruben, underneath the episode that was on her website was basically saying that I looked like a porn star. Essentially that my dress, they couldn't believe that I had my arms out and I was showing way too much leg. It was like a whole thing. And it was literally like the first thing I saw. And again, this is not uncommon. You know, there are kind of examples of this in the gaming industry where it just goes to this extraordinary level where women are they're unsafe. So this is mild compared to what some people have endured. But I've heard everything. I remember there was one time, this is really funny. I'm actually going to include it in my book. I hope it stays in there. But there was this, I take a lot of pride and we work really hard to put out the best content that we possibly can. For our paid training programs or experiences, like we work our tails off. We want to provide as much value as possible. We're not for everyone, and that's totally fine. But we're honest. I wouldn't be in business for 20 years if I was some scam artist. You know what I mean? Like we do the best we can. We're as transparent as we can be. We strive to over-deliver, all of those things. And I remember this one chain that came up online and my team kind of surfaced it to me because we were laughing so hard. There was like no criticism of the work per se. It was about how much of Marie's hair do you think is fake? It's got to be at least 80% extensions. I'm like, are you guys shitting me? Like I put so much effort into my content and you're going to talk about how much of my hair is fake, which it's not. And by the way, if it was, that's fine, but it's not. Taking it back, I think there's a few things that we must keep in mind. One, not everyone likes you already. I've seen one of the biggest things that holds people back from sharing their idea, their product, or their service is this fear that someone's going to judge them. Someone's not going to like it. And the truth I want to remind everyone of is there's people that are judging you right now. This is us as humans. We're judging machines. There are people that love you, that respect you, that are your family probably, and they judge the crap out of you. So that's already happening. We don't want to let that fear of it happening hold us back because it's already a reality. Here's the second thing I want everyone to remember. The more you care about what other people think, the more they own you. And I would bet the kind of folks that listen to your show, Ruben, are not the kind of folks that want to be owned by anyone. They are independent. They are creative. They are rebels. They are world changers. So the more focus you put on what other people think of you, the more they really do own you. It's as though they are the puppeteer of who you are and how you live. And that's just not okay for anyone. And then the third thing I'll say is this. When it comes to criticism, you always have to consider the source. You must consider the source. I will tell you this. I've had such an incredible opportunity over the course of my career to be connected with incredibly accomplished people, creative people, people that are working their tails off, changing culture, doing amazing things on our planet. Never once have they showed up at my doorstep with criticism. You want to know why? Because they're too busy doing their own shit to worry about what you're doing. And anytime I've asked for feedback from someone that I admire, they always deliver it to me in a way that honors the hard work I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? Like, hey, here's what's going great. I would add this to what you're thinking about, but frankly, that's my opinion and it may not be relevant for you. I have never once received harsh criticism online or offline from someone I admire and respect. So you have to pay attention to where it's coming from. If you do not admire and respect who this person is, you have to really step back and go, am I willing to take their opinion to heart?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because we make these imaginary backstories for these people who leave these inane comments, and it's like, well, they probably stopped thinking about the comment long after. I mean, immediately after they left it, and we're still thinking about it. So that's a weird pairing there. It's like, well, they don't know you. They don't know you, and they don't even know what you're about. And so it's like we give too much weight almost to these people who we have no clue who they are.
And then also, I think the final thing, and this is a really good perspective for all of us to keep in mind, is to be sad, not mad. What does that mean? Anyone who's going to spew venom or hate or be mean or just be an asshole to someone else online without knowing them has got to be in tremendous pain. They have got to be struggling with something in their life that's so bad. They must be so miserable. They must be so unhappy and so unfulfilled, because think about it, Ruben. Nobody who's happy or fulfilled or loving or joyful behaves that way. So being sad, not mad, keeps you in a place of compassion, and it also keeps things in perspective, because if they have time and energy to spew that stuff out, you got to know they're really in a place of hurt.
Totally agree with that. Okay, so I want to switch gears here just a little bit, Marie, and talk about B School, because I've taken it. I love it. It completely transformed the way that my wife and I run our business, and just look at our business and think about our business. There's so many parts to it that were transformative for me. But can you congratulations, by the way, because this is your 10th year of doing B School, right? You've been doing it for a decade now.
Yes. And we have and thank you, by the way, for what you shared. And it just warms my heart. We've had over 44,000 graduates at this point from over 560 plus industries in 139 countries. So Ruben, as you can share too, we've road tested this thing. We've kicked it around. We've had it in all different kinds of folks' hands, and it helps people really produce results. So we're really proud of it.
What can you just give a little taste of what is it all about? Like, why did you create it? How is it different from other programs like it? Because what I love is you're not speaking to all entrepreneurs. Like, there's a particular type of person you're speaking to. Who are you speaking to?
Yeah. So B School is online business school for modern entrepreneurs who want to start and grow a profitable, meaningful business. So the reason why I started it was because when I first started my business, I found little education online for how to build a business for someone who doesn't necessarily have an MBA. They don't have stacks of cash or investors, right, to just pour into something. They want to build it step by step, maybe from their kitchen table, from their garage, on nights and weekends. There's something they believe in their heart that they really want to get out into the world. But when it comes to sales and marketing and how to put all these online pieces together, they don't really understand how to do that. And most importantly, how to do that in a way that aligns with their values, their integrity, their personality, their heart, and their desire to make a difference. Speaking to your point, Ruben, B School's not for everyone. It's not for people who think about customers as nothing more than numbers on the bottom of a balance sheet. That's not our philosophy. B School is less about what you sell, and it's more about what you believe. So if you believe that your customers are ultimately the most important thing and you want to go above and beyond in customer experience, B School is for you. If you want to learn how to do modern marketing in the most gorgeous, creative, exciting, beautiful way, meaning you want to learn how to use the tools like email marketing, video marketing, social media, any different way that you can share your message. And you want to do so where it inspires people to act, not based out of fear, not based out of scarcity, and certainly not based out of manipulation, but out of genuinely helping people create the change that they want to create. B School's for you. I also created it because I discovered that many folks who have big hearts, I call them big-hearted creatives, who have this real desire to make a difference with their products and their services, have an aversion to sales and marketing. They have a connection to it that's very negative. They think maybe like used car salesman, right? Someone's going to be really aggressive and push something on someone, and you're going to annoy people with your messaging over and over again, and you're going to basically be ostracized from your community. That is a very old and outdated model. Of course, there's some people that still do things like that, but that's not what we teach. One of the things I love about what we teach is modern marketing brings out the best of your humanity, not the worst. What does that mean? Qualities like generosity, empathy, love, creativity, listening, service, all of that, when you really practice what we teach you in B School, that's who you are, that's who you become, and that's how your business operates. So it becomes this virtual cycle of goodness, frankly, where not only is that kind of marketing more effective, meaning it creates better results, but your business then becomes this incredible physical demonstration of your highest values. That's when life really starts to sing, and that's what I get excited about. So that's what B School is.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it really is just it's the fundamentals of business. In my mind, that's how I view it, because it's like, and the fundamentals are the most important. I think people want to get fancy and they're like, oh, what's the new tactic and the new thing? It's like, well, the fundamentals are actually how you succeed. Like something as simple as, for me, the ICA was a huge mindset shift, a paradigm shift. It was like, oh, the ideal, you call it the ideal customer avatar. Like, what is your ideal customer avatar? What is a kind of a composite, fictional, but also realistic person who is interested, like the ideal person that you're targeting? What do they look like? What are they interested in? What do they do on a daily basis? Like, what news channels are they subscribed to? Like, just fleshing all that out was super helpful for me, because it allowed me to have more clarity and to actually know who I'm talking to, rather than just vomiting words into the abyss of the internet.
It helps you get focused. It helps you get strategic. It can help speed everything along. I love that you brought that up. And coming back to your point about the fundamentals and people going, yeah, but what's the advanced shit? Here's what I need to say is, no matter what platform you're on, right? No matter what high-tech tools you're doing, here's the thing, Ruben, and I've seen this happen over and over again. And this is why people, by the way, come back and do B School every year, and they can do it for free, because once you're a member for life. It doesn't matter how the algorithms change or how these fancy ad networks are set up or the amount of retargeting you can do, or like all these sophisticated mechanisms that we now have at our fingertips, which, by the way, are awesome. If you don't know how to craft a message that connects and converts, you're screwed. If you don't know what to say, if you don't know where to best direct your energy, your effort, your resources in order to get the results that you need in your business in order for it to survive, you're screwed. All of that comes back to the fundamentals. You can learn some of the tips and tricks on YouTube for free. But like you said, if no one trains you in the timeless principles, the practices, the psychological understanding of how to make any business thrive, no matter how tech changes, you're not going to go very far. That's why what we do is focus on the timeless stuff in B School, because, hey, look, we're in an age where technology is constantly changing. That's just a fact we have to embrace. But if you know just a core set of fundamentals, you're going to be able to thrive no matter what changes come your way.
Yes, I love that. And to me, it also just is a good blend of like personal development and business. Like it's a holistic approach to business, because you really cannot separate like developing yourself as a person, developing your mindset, developing compassion. You can't separate those things from being a good business person or running a successful business. And you take that into account. And that's one of the things I love about what you do.
Thank you.
You are also coming out with a book soon, and I am so pumped about this. You've been working on it. Where are you at? Is it still being worked on? Is it ready to come out?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. So we are in the kind of final edit stages where we're just shaping the last pieces of the book from the manuscript standpoint. And it will be out September 10th. It's called Everything is Figureoutable. And the subtitle, which we don't even know if there will be that, if we'll use it, but it gives a good frame on the book, is How One Simple Belief Can Help You Change Your Life and the World. And it's really the handbook to becoming the creative force in your own life. So if there is anything that you feel stuck or frustrated about, if there's any problem or challenge or even dream that you're looking at, it could be in the realm of relationships or business or career or family or your health or whatever, you'll have at your disposal this internal algorithm that will allow you to walk into any situation, to face any obstacle, and to basically harness your innate wisdom to create change.
I love that. So how long have you been working on this book? And I really love because this philosophy is not new. You've had this everything is figureoutable philosophy for years, ever since you started being a person online, I think. And so where did it come from? And tell us more about that.
Yeah, so it actually came from my mom. So this philosophy has been with me since I was a small child, and it came from her. Ruben, my mom, she grew up the daughter of two alcoholic parents. They were in poverty, and when she was young, she made a promise to herself that she was going to find a way to a better life. And so when her and my dad got married, and eventually I came along, my mom is just one of those people who's like the most industrious, frugal people you will ever meet. She never grew up with much. And as a family, we didn't have a lot either. And so as a kid, we would sit around the kitchen table kind of cutting out coupons, and she loved to teach me all the ways to save money. Well, one of my mom's most prized possessions was this little transistor radio that she got from Tropicana Orange Juice for free. It was shaped like an actual orange. It had a little red and white straw sticking out the top, and it was a little AM FM radio. It was like her favorite thing ever. So my mom carried that radio everywhere she went. And as a kid, I knew I could find her by listening to the sound, like listening, where is her? And the tinny little sound of this radio somewhere around the house or the yard. So one day I was coming home from school and walking down the street, and I heard the radio off in the distance. And as I got closer, it was coming from above. And I looked, and I found my mom perched on the top of our 2-story house, like sitting up there with her little orange. And I was terrified. I'm like, what the hell is my mom doing sitting on the roof of the 2-story house? And I yelled up, and I was like, Mom, are you okay? And she yells down, and she's like, I have to tell you, my mom, even though she looks like June Cleaver, she curses like a truck driver, which is where I get my potty mouth. And she's like, oh, Ree, it's fine. She's like, the roof had a little leak. I called the roofer. He said it would be at least $500. I said, screw that. I found some asphalt in the garage. I would do it myself. So, okay, boom, that was that. Another day I came home from school, and I hear the little sound of the radio coming from the back of the house, right? So I go to the back of the house, I open the door, and she's in the bathroom, and it looks like a war broke out. There was pipes sticking out of the walls. There was like all dust particles, just floating around the air. And I was like, Mom, what happened? Is everything okay? And she's like, oh, it's not a big deal. She's like, there was a few cracks in the tile on the shower, and I didn't want it to get moldy, so I'm retiling the bathroom. And I was just like, and again, I'm like, 7, 8 years old, going like, what the hell's going on? So you got to get that this was the 80s, right? This is pre-internet. This is pre-YouTube. This is pre-Google. And my mom is high school educated. So it's not like she's some higher educated person who just figures everything out from intellect. So one day I came home from school, and it was late, and it was dark out. And I walk in the house, and there's total silence. It's very unusual for an Italian-American family. No lights on, walking around, don't hear anything. I'm wondering, where the hell's my mom? Where's the Tropicana Orange? Something's got to be really wrong. And then I heard some clicks and clacks, and I followed that sound into the kitchen, and I see my mom like hovered over our kitchen table, and it looked like an operating room. There was electrical tape, there was screwdrivers, and then laid out in front of her in dozens of pieces was the little Tropicana Orange radio, completely dismantled. And I was like, Mom, is everything okay? I knew she loved this thing. I was like, what happened? Is your radio broken? And she said, it's not that big of a deal. She's like, the antenna was a little off. The dial wasn't working right. So I'm fixing it. And this was the first time, Ruben, that I thought to ask her. I kind of stood there watching her work her magic. And I said, hey, Mom, how do you know how to do so many things that no one has ever shown you before and that you've never known how to do, but you can actually do it? And she said, she like put her utensils, her screwdriver down, and she looked at me and she said, Ree, it's not that big of a deal. She goes, you can do anything you put your mind to as long as you roll up your sleeves and do it. Everything is figureoutable. And Ruben, I just stood there like completely transfixed, repeating that little phrase to myself over and over and over again. Like, oh my God, everything is figureoutable. Everything is figureoutable. And from that moment on, it became, and it still is to this day, the driving force of my life. That's what gave me the notion, right? To be able to quit after my dad told me I have to find something I love. I was like, okay, I can figure this out. After every single job, starting the business, everything I wanted to do in my life, up until this day, I use that phrase daily to solve problems.
I love that. I mean, that is such a powerful belief to have. It's like it really kind of gives you self-belief. It gives you a belief in yourself that you can actually figure it out. Like, this is kind of a silly example, and your mom is your mom figured out much harder things than I. But just recently, like I bought a like a thing from IKEA, like a table or whatever, and I lost the instructions, and I ended up just like doing it, like putting it together, and then I found the instructions later on, and like I didn't even understand the instructions because they were completely different from what it is that I had actually done, because I took my own route and I kind of finagled it in my own way, and it still ended up fine. But I think like to have that confidence, like it's cool to have guidance, but I think sometimes we can like get a little bit like hero worship and kind of depend on others to tell us how to do every single little thing. But I think that if you just kind of like jump in there and just do it, like you do figure it out, and that's a really good belief to have.
Yes. And by the way, I just want to offer you this because like it's those little moments in life. And, you said, oh, it's this IKEA kind of piece of furniture, but our life is so weaved together from this tapestry of seemingly mundane things and seemingly difficult things. Like I, had put out a call to our community asking them for how everything is Figureoutable has supported them in their life. And Ruben, it's been so inspiring because it has helped people face some of the toughest situations. I'm talking about, devastating loss, tragic illness, finding themselves trying to recover after something like, Hurricane Harvey. And so this one little idea, to your point, it's like the little things that we face during the day can help us, and some of the biggest toughest challenges of our lives, when we really do believe on a cellular level that everything is Figureoutable, it gives us hope. It gives us resilience. It gives us the power that we need to get up and try again. And for me, that's really what life is all about.
I love that. I know we're getting near on time here, but I wanted to ask you a couple more things. Well, one in particular, mostly for my benefit, because I've been telling my audience that I've been working on a book for quite some time, but there's been offs and ons, and I know you completed your book essentially, and I'm just curious, like how you went about writing it, like what your writing process looks like. And I know that this message has been in you for a long time. So, did you kind of gather your notes from the past several years, or did you just sit down one day and just blurt it out on the page? Like, what does that look like for you?
Oh gosh, it's been so difficult. It's been really, really hard. I thought about, because I haven't written a book in years, right? This is a very far from my first book, which I wrote in my 20s. This one was going to be hard for me because it was going to be way easier for me to write a book on business. That's I don't want to say formulaic, but I've been talking about business for so long, and this idea is very broad. It's a big idea and it can apply to a lot of things. So I was up for the challenge, and it has been a challenge. So to answer your question, I started off my book proposal with an outline, knowing that like most outlines, this was just an initial structure, that thing was likely going to morph and change, but it was at least a starting place, right? So we had the outline, and then I just started to tackle each chapter. But I'm telling you, it was really, really difficult. One of the things I found most challenging was just carving out the time between running the business and producing and writing the show, and then adding this whole other project onto my plate. Because it's not like any of those other things. You can't just hit pause on the rest of your life. It's not, at least for me, right? That's not necessarily how it worked. So part of the challenge was finding not even just the time, but also the mental and creative bandwidth, because I pour myself into everything that I do. So trying to figure out when I could best write so that my most fresh ideas could come. And it was not a clean process, Ruben. It was certainly not like, oh, I just get up every day and then like words flow through me. Like that's not how it is. Oh yeah, no, extremely difficult. I in fact talked with a lot of writer friends, and like I only have one friend who I won't even say who this friend is, but only one friend who said, oh yeah, I just like open up the page and I just kind of channel it all. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like it made me want to stick a fork in my eye. Everyone else was like, It's really hard, Marie. And if you're finding it really hard, you're not alone. So I pass that on to you, Ruben. But one of the things that I learned was, and I learned this way too late in this process, and I would offer this to you and to any of your listeners. If you have someone in your life who really knows you, who is also a good writer, if you can bring them on in the editing process early to just like read through a chapter with you and tell you like, oh, I'm a little lost here, or this doesn't make sense, or oh my goodness, can you say one more thing about this? That's something I waited way too long and was torturing myself by myself for way too many months. So hopefully that's helpful.
It is helpful. Yeah, I have, my wife is that for me, I would say, and she helped me through. Well, my first draft that I started was like, I thought I was way too broad. That was the main thing. It was, and then like I got to the point when I was just confusing myself. I was like getting so philosophical. I was like, and my wife makes fun of me now. She goes, "Yeah, you were basically like, what is what?"
Yes.
And so
exactly.
It was like chasing my own tail, you know? And so I ditched that, and now I'm much clearer with her help. But you're right, like bouncing ideas off other people, because you're so close to your own work that it's like, what am I even writing about anymore? And so it's really good to have that perspective.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. And I just interviewed Stephen Pressfield, who's my favorite author, and his book, The War of Art, is my favorite book of all time. And we were talking about this, and he also said it is so important, and not just someone to read your material. So I want to be really specific here. Someone who is going to go through it with you line by line, like really work with you and the whole scope of the book, because I've had some people read certain, paragraphs or pages, but until someone is kind of ride or die with you, right, the whole thing, it's hard to get the perspective that you need to make sure the whole work is cohesive, that from beginning to end, it all makes sense, and it takes a reader on a very specific journey and delivers on very specific promises. The other thing I would say to you, my friend, and for anyone listening who wants to write a book, which is one of like the most common goals that we human beings share, this is something I didn't do early enough. I didn't take my own advice, because I always tell people to do this, and I do it when it comes to our training programs, is write the sales and marketing material first. So I recently had to write the Amazon copy for the book, which, by the way, you can go check out if you go on if you go on Amazon and you search Marie Forleo, Everything is Figureoutable, you can actually pre-order the book, which is exciting. When my publisher sent over a draft of what they just want to take a first stab at it, it was not at all close to what I believed that copy should be. And I realized after writing the copy, I was like, oh my goodness, like everyone should do this at the top of the book writing process, because it serves as a filter and a guide to make sure that you're delivering on your promises.
Ooh, I like that. That's really good advice.
Yeah. So write your Amazon copy like now. And not that it has to be permanent, but it's just a really good draft. And I always advise people when I'm trying to help them, like through B-School, for example, if they're developing their own course or they're developing some retreat or some program that they want to share with the world, I'm like, look, your content is really important, but you know what's even more important? The marketing and the sales piece. So write your sales page alongside developing your content. And it's this wonderful dance, Ruben, that when you do it back and forth, you kind of go between the sales and marketing of it and the actual thing itself, you find that you develop better content because you wrote the sales and marketing bits first.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like they're not separate processes, they're kind of intertwined. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so hopefully that's helpful for you, my friend.
Thank you, Marie. Marie, this has been an amazing talk. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience, and hopefully we can do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you everyone for listening today.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Think Grow podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and find value in this podcast, I humbly ask you to please subscribe or leave me a review on iTunes. Or you can just share it with a friend who you think might find value in it. If you've already done any of these, I want to take a moment to sincerely thank you. I truly, truly appreciate your support. Lastly, if you have any suggestions for future guests or topics you'd like to hear covered, you can email podcast@thinkgrowprosper.org.